He said it calmly. He said it like he was canceling a subscription. If you choose him, you're not my daughter anymore. The room didn't explode. No one shouted. No glass shattered. But something permanent cracked inside me. My father had always spoken in decisions, not emotions. He ran our household the way he ran his logistics company. Efficient, authoritative, unquestioned. And that night, I realized I was no longer a daughter to him. I was a liability. His problem was not that I was dating. His problem was who I was dating. Ethan was quiet. Ethan wore the same gray hoodie 3 times a week. Ethan corrected professors under his breath and apologized afterward. Ethan did not own a car. Ethan did not dominate a room. To my father, that translated to one word: nobody. He didn't yell when he met Ethan. He observed him, measured him, then dismissed him. You can do better, my father told me after Ethan left that first dinner. But what he meant was something else. You could do richer. I tried to explain. I tried to tell him Ethan was finishing a dual degree in computer engineering and applied mathematics. I tried to tell him he had already been recruited by a research lab. I tried to tell him intelligence doesn't introduce itself loudly. My father laughed. Smart boys don't always become successful men. What he never asked was how Ethan made me feel, because how I felt was irrelevant in a house built on performance. My mother stayed silent during those conversations. She had mastered the art of surviving without opposing. But I hadn't. Ich was it done. And my father followed through on his sentence. He cut off my credit card. He removed my name from the family health insurance plan. He told extended relatives I was going through a phase. He stopped answering my calls. Disowning, I learned, doesn't require paperwork. It requires withdrawal. I moved into Ethan's small apartment near campus. The heater clicked too loudly at night. The kitchen's sink dripped. The couch had a tear in the corner. It felt unstable. It felt uncertain. It felt real. Ethan never once asked me to choose him over my father. He told me, you should try again. He told me, I don't want to be the reason you lose your family. That is what my father never understood. Ethan wasn't trying to win me. He was trying not to cost me. Months passed. My father never reached out. Then something shifted. It started with an email. Ethan stared at his laptop longer than usual that evening. He reread the message 3 times. The research lab he'd been assisting had been acquired. The acquisition wasn't small. It involved a defense technology contractor. The algorithms Ethan had helped refine were now being integrated into large-scale logistics software. The kind of logistics software used by major corporations. The kind of corporations like my father's largest client. Ethan didn't celebrate. He looked worried. Because the contract clauses were complicated. And because intellectual property law is never simple. Weeks later, my father called me for the first time in 6 months. His voice sounded thinner. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize. He asked about Ethan. Specifically, he asked what Ethan was working on. That was the moment I understood this wasn't coincidence. My father's company had lost a major bid. A competitor had adopted new optimization software that reduced transport waste by 12%. 12% in logistics is not cosmetic. It is survival. And the software powering that efficiency, built on research Ethan had helped develop. My father didn't know that part yet. He only knew a competitor had leapfrogged him. Does he have contacts? My father asked carefully. He didn't say Ethan's name. He said I felt something complicated in my chest. Not triumph, not revenge, something closer to clarity. For the first time, the power dynamic had tilted. Not because Ethan became flashy, not because he became arrogant, but because the quiet work he had been doing suddenly mattered in a language my father understood. Money, contracts, control. My father requested dinner. Not with me, with Ethan. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't afraid. He was cautious. Do you think he actually wants to talk? Ethan asked me. Or does he want something? I didn't answer immediately, because I knew. The dinner felt different from the first one. My father leaned forward. He listened. He asked technical questions he barely understood. Ethan explained patiently. He never exaggerated his role. He never claimed ownership over the entire system. He described the team. He described the methodology. He described the limits. My father nodded often. Too often. Then came the pivot. What would it take, my father asked, to access something similar? The air changed. That was the moment. Not the email. Not the business loss. This. The moment my father tried to convert Ethan from nobody to resource. Ethan didn't look at me. He didn't look impressed. He didn't look vindictive. He looked thoughtful. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to share proprietary information, Ethan said calmly. But I can suggest open research papers and public frameworks you can explore. My father's smile tightened. He wasn't being offered advantage. He was being offered fairness. And fairness was not the leverage he wanted. Over the next month, my father attempted subtle reconciliation. He invited me home for Sunday dinner. He reinstated my health insurance quietly. He stopped telling relatives I was in a phase. But he never apologized. One evening, I asked him directly, "Did you call me because you missed me?" Silence stretched across the dining room. "I called because you're my daughter," he said. That answer sounded complete, but it wasn't specific. So I asked again, "If Ethan had not been connected to something useful, would you still have called?" He didn't respond, and in that silence, I understood something heavier than rejection. My father didn't see relationships as mutual bonds. He saw them as assets or risks. The turning point wasn't Ethan's success. The turning point was my recognition. I stopped seeking his approval after that. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly. Ethan continued advancing in his field. He accepted a position with the acquiring firm. The salary was strong. The work was demanding. The ethics clauses were strict. He never leveraged his role to punish my father's company. He never blocked opportunities. He never sought dominance. He simply worked. Eventually, my father's company stabilized. They adapted. They invested in modernization. But something in our relationship had permanently shifted. One afternoon, my father asked Ethan for informal advice again. This time, Ethan responded with transparency. "I can't give insider guidance," he said, "but I'm happy to help you understand the broader trends." My father studied him for a long time. Then he said something unexpected. "I misjudged you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. But it was the first honest sentence he had offered. And yet, it didn't undo what had been done. Disowning leaves residue. Trust doesn't regenerate simply because circumstances change. My father never called Ethan a nobody again. But he also never addressed the night he cut me off. And here's the question that stayed with me. Is respect earned only when it becomes profitable? And if someone values you only after others do, is that respect or market validation? Ethan and I eventually married in a small ceremony. My father attended. He contributed financially without being asked. During the reception, he gave a speech. He spoke about resilience. He spoke about intelligence. He spoke about seeing potential where others might not. He did not mention the word disown. I watched him from across the room. He looked older, less certain. Maybe losing that contract had done more than dent revenue. Maybe it had dented certainty. Because certainty is fragile when built on hierarchy. Over time, our relationship evolved into something cautious but functional. We spoke regularly. We visited. We maintained civility. But I no longer shaped my life around his approval. That was the real shift. Not money. Not contracts. Not corporate leverage. Autonomy. And the irony is this. Ethan never set out to prove my father wrong. He never tried to climb into a position of dominance. He simply kept building quietly. Then nobody labeled dissolve not because he argued against it, but because reality contradicted it. And sometimes, the most unsettling truth for someone who disowns you is not your failure. It's your stability without them. Personal reflection. This story is less about success and more about perception. The father's mistake was not disliking Ethan. Parents are allowed to worry. His mistake was equating worth with visible status. By reducing his daughter's relationship to a strategic risk, he revealed how transactional his worldview had become. At the same time, the daughter's growth came from detaching her identity from paternal validation. She did not win. She matured. Ethan's strength lay in restraint. He did not retaliate when the power dynamic shifted. He maintained ethical boundaries even when he had leverage. That restraint preserved his integrity and prevented the conflict from escalating into permanent fracture. The father eventually acknowledged misjudgment, but acknowledgement without full accountability leaves emotional gaps. Repair requires naming harm. Still, the absence of revenge in this story makes it psychologically credible. Growth here was quiet, and quiet growth is often the most stable kind.